Over the last 20 years, and it's not talked about, 6 million people have been killed. Question is why? Well, the Congo is one of the richest nations on the planet. It is estimated just in the Congo that there's something like $100 trillion of wealth. Now check this out, Dr. Cooper. If you take the continent of Africa as a whole, we're talking about something upwards of $1,000 trillion of wealth, minerals, agriculture, land, beaches, oil, gold, diamonds, cobalt, ores, and going forward. The economies of the 21st century cannot exist without Africa, and hence without the exploitation of Africa. Now, Du Bois writes a book that I know that you know about called The World in Africa. It's published in 1948, and I'd just like to read something that he said back then that I think is relevant not only to Africa, but to Afro-America. He says, "Thus arose the Congo Free State, and by balancing the secret designs of German, French, and British against each other, this state became the worst center of African exploitation and started the partition of Africa among European powers." Partition meaning the splitting up of Africa. It was designed to form a pattern of similar partition of more and more firmly to the exploitation of each colonial area and the exploitation of Africans. He continues, "All these things and 100 others became necessary to modern life, and modern life thus was built around colonial ownership and exploitation. The cost of this exploitation was enormous. The colonial system caused 10 times more deaths than actual war. In the first 25 years of the 19th century, famines in India starved 1 million men and women, and famine was bound up with exploitation. Widespread monopoly of land to deprive all men of primary sources of support was carried out either through direct ownership or indirect mortgage and exorbitant interest. Disease could not be checked. Tuberculosis in the mines of South Africa, syphilis in all colonial regions, cholera, leprosy, malaria. One of the worst things that happened was the complete and deliberate breakdown of culture among the oppressed peoples. Europe was staggered at the Leopoldian, that is, King Leopold, atrocities, and they were terrible indeed. But what we who were behind the scenes felt most keenly was the fact that the real catastrophe in the Congo was the desolation and murder in the larger sense, the invasion of family life, the ruthless destruction of every social barrier, the shattering of every tribal law, the introduction of criminal practices which struck the chiefs of the people dumb with horror. In a word, a veritable avalanche of filth and immorality overwhelmed the Congo, and it came from Europe. The moral humiliation forced on proud black people was illustrated in the British conquest of Ashanti. The reigning Asantehene had never been conquered. His armies had repeatedly driven back the British, but the British finally triumphed after 5 wars by breaking their word and overwhelming him by numbers and superior weapons. They promised him peace and honor, but they demanded a public act of submission. And then finally, Du Bois ends his section. Perhaps the worst thing about the colonial system was the contradiction which arose and had to arise in Europe with regards to the whole situation. Extreme poverty in colonies was a main cause of wealth and luxury in Europe. The results of this poverty were disease, ignorance, and crime, yet these had to be represented as natural characteristics of black folk. Education for colonial people must inevitably mean unrest and revolt. Education, therefore, had to be limited and destroyed and used to inculcate obedience and servility, lest the whole colonial system be overthrown. I'll stop there. I would just like to say one thing. I guess you would have some questions, but this question of genocide and slavery on the African continent and genocide and slavery in the Western Hemisphere visited upon people of African descent is still resonating with us to this day. So, when I look at, the group of seven, the so-called rich nations of Europe and Japan and the United States and Canada, gather and be so proud of what they have and what their societies have achieved, my mind always goes back to the 1500s when the slave trade began. And I'm always reminded, as I look at these proud and arrogant white people, I'm reminded of the 20 million Congolese who have been killed. Some would say tribal wars. These are not tribal wars. These are wars where white mercenaries pay and organize Africans to carry out terror and murder against other Africans for the sake of preventing unity in the Congo so the people could have a government of their choice, a government which serves them. And the atrocities are enormous. We cry crocodile tears when so-called terrorists bomb a nightclub in Europe or in the United States and people die, and it is horrible. But let's consider, the rape of children publicly, girls as young as 7 years old, in these wars of terror to suppress and destroy the natural tendency of resistance among Africans. So this is, when I see Europe, what I really see behind it is the profound and enduring exploitation and genocide against peoples of African descent.
Wow. Well said. Well said. Before we take a caller or two, some years ago I interviewed the author of a book called King Leopold's Ghost.
Oh, yes.
And it documented some of what you said, but in listening to you read that passage, I think the thing that just blows my mind is how knowledgeable Du Bois was about all this stuff. Like decades before this other material, how was he able to be on the vanguard and be so prolific and so profound in his understanding decades ago, 150 years ago?
The book that I read from was in 1947. We're talking about 7 years. But I attribute his greatness as a thinker to his humility and his desire to make available, especially to African peoples, the truth of world history and of the world system as it existed in the 20th century. Of course, he was an extraordinary genius. He had extraordinary intellectual and moral courage. He was not afraid to seek out the truth and tell it. Now, of course, he was penalized by his own government, and I put quotes around own government, for being an advocate of peace, Pan-Africanism, and for the rights of black people in this country, tied it all together. And so he paid a price. He was arrested. He was indicted. He was not allowed to make a living. Eventually, he leaves the country at the invitation of the first president of Ghana, Sajifo Kwame Nkrumah, and goes there to live where he spends the last 2 years of his life.
Excellent. It also harkens me back when I was in the doctoral program and was taking a urban sociology course. and my instructor had never read anything by Du Bois. And at that time, I hadn't read the Philadelphia Negro.
Right.
And so I asked her, could I include it as part of my lit review? We had to do, 3 or 4 major lit reviews. And she said, yeah. And again, for you, this must be a common theme. And then we'll take a break after your comment of just even the scholars that don't know how prolific his work is, that we're teaching at Temple or Harvard or anywhere in the world that just don't know his work.
Right. They don't know his work. One of the things about this is that the government of the United States waged a 40, 50-year smear campaign against him. And even the Du Bois that we think we know is only a very, very small part of what he was and who he is and what he means to this moment in history.
Excellent, excellent. Folks, you are listening strong to 900 AM, 96.1 FM. I would argue and say the world-renowned Dr. Tony Montero. Too bad we don't have a camera. The brother doesn't age. I've aged. Looks like I should have a walker up in here. The brother looks strong, vibrant. You hear the words, the message. He's been on this drumbeat prolifically for years. Been at many institutions, has done so much community work, and I was a proud youngster back in the day, happy to present at one of his early conferences. So we're going to take a brief pause. We'll be right back.
Our kids are smoke free, so let them be.
Who does Big Tobacco make candy flavored tobacco for?
Our kids.
Whose kids?
Our kids.
Well, what do you expect? When asked if any of them smoked, they said, "Are you kidding? We reserve that right for the poor, the young, the black, and the stupid." That's their plan.
What's our plan?
Stay woke, fight back.
How? What do you mean?
Put their profiling of our kids on blast.
We have the power, Philly. Fight back and quit now. Go to smokefreephilly.org. To quit, call 1-800-QUIT-NOW.
Are you a tenant with an eviction or repair problem and need advice? Come to Turn's free 1-hour tenant rights workshop, held 1701 West Lehigh Avenue, Philadelphia, every Saturday at 11 a.m. Turn is here to help you.
St. Jude exceeds any expectation or any dream I could have ever had about a hospital. First was getting David here to save his life. Then I was told we wouldn't get a bill. I didn't quite process that. How's this possible? It's possible through all the wonderful people who donate.
It's pretty amazing when you consider that 7 years ago, we didn't have the treatments we have now. We cure 80% of children with cancer. If you think about that, go back 50 years, we were curing 20 to 30%. This is the miracle story of modern medicine.
The research here is research that we share with everyone else because overall we want to help all children that have cancer. What makes that possible is people that give to St. Jude. They really help us to fulfill our mission, and we're so grateful to have them on our team.
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Finding cures. Saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
You're listening to Wake Up with Word on Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, independent black media.
Welcome back, family. You're listening to Wake Up with Word, 96.1 FM, of course, 900 AM. We are in studio with Dr. Anthony Montero. Let's go straight to the callers. Line 1, Frank joining us from Cobbs Creek. Welcome to the program.
Hello, Dr. Cooper.
How you doing?
Yes, I've always liked you. I do have something to say about Robert, but, this is Black Music Month, I believe.
June. Although for me, every month, but June specifically. Someone has said that, yes.
Yes, that's very important. They ever talk about where the money is going, and how the money is being stolen from blacks and given to whites, what's going on. Yeah. In the schools, they discontinue their music. And maybe they should have discontinued the Philadelphia Orchestra and continued teaching music in the schools, because, jazz is, only original music that came out of America, that in, like hillbilly. So maybe that's where they should put some of that money.
Excellent, and thank you so much for your call. I mean, it fits in a sense of what Dr. Montero was talking about, how things have been taken, from us, and then we're detached from the history of, say, jazz music, and we're the original progenitors. I believe on line 2, we have a question or comment for Dr. Montero from Brother Timothy, South Philly. Welcome to the program.
Dr. Cooper, I missed that smooth voice, man. wait, when I heard it, I said, hey, man, I got to connect with a smooth brother.
Excellent.
Wait a minute, that's Dr. Montero, too. Both have some smooth voices.
I'll tell people, Dr. Montero is the point guard. I'm the backup guard, but I appreciate that, man. I'm the 2 guard.
Well, listen, we're on the same team, man. We're like the Warriors. We beat everything that's coming to us.
I hear you.
Okay. A lot of us know Samuel Clemens, Mark Twain as writing Huck Finn. But 2 of his best books are King Leopold's Soliloquy. He specifically talks about how in the Congo, King Leopold is having the hands cut off of Africans who are not taken out in the trees in order to get rubber. And he does a just job in explaining it, and also Christian Science. But a real hero explaining about the Congo, if you've ever seen the movie Tarzan, there's a guy by the name of George Washington Williams, a Howard man like you. He does a very good job of explaining what was going on in the Congo. And another, Du Bois was on it all the time and right away. But another guy I wanted to give you a book about, you should read, his name is Bruce Bridges, called Reclaiming Your African Mind. After all these tragedies that we've been through, in the African community and going back to our history, we need to reclaim our African mind.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I would agree with you. I would agree with you. And reclaiming the African mind, in my opinion, is understanding the world in which we live. The African mind, be it in the United States or in Cuba and Jamaica or in the Congo, has to be anchored, as Frederick Douglass said, to resistance. There was a Henry Highland Garnett, a very, very famous abolitionist, black abolitionist. That is, he opposed slavery and fought against it. He had a thing that he would always say, and it was, let your motto be resist, resist, resist. Of course, Frederick Douglass, there cannot be progress without struggle. He who wants progress without struggle wants the crops without the rain or the sea without its mighty roar. So the African mind must be informed by resistance, by struggle, and by courage. So that's what I would say. I agree with you very much, Tim.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we're all on the same page. Yes. In fact, let's go to our next caller, Mo, calling in from North Philly. Welcome to the program.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Dr. Montero.
Good morning.
Turn to Africa. Heard this guy from coast to coast was talking about what happened over there. How this guy rolled all the money he made over there and went back and organized his wife under Queen Victoria. And everybody was bragging about this sister marrying into their family. She just married into a criminal empire. Because they got blood of black people on their hands and people of color all around the world.
There is no question about that. I have a problem with the celebration of this so-called integration of the royal family, who lives off the stolen wealth of colonialism. That, to me, is not an achievement for African Americans or Africans anywhere. I agree with you completely, Mo.
Yeah, because they were saying that the same group of people that came over here, I think it was under President Wilson, and they're the ones who hooked up the Federal Reserve Bank. And you know what damage that is doing. They took control of most of the religious institutions, and if they didn't preach religion the way they wanted, they wouldn't get funded. Now, my second question to you, people, I look at some of the stuff Obama did in Africa was worse than that. By him killing Muammar Gaddafi, when Gaddafi was trying to organize the United States of Africa, have a central bank, And Libya, since it's in Africa, they said they had the best grade of oil. They were no longer going to take American dollars. They wanted real money. And they knocked him off. But black people in America think Obama was the best thing since sliced bread. To me, he's worse than all them other people that went in Africa. The stuff that they did over there. And to this very day, they still got killing people. They had more military campaigns in Africa than they had in Afghanistan, Iraq, and in Syria.
You know, if I could just comment upon what you're saying, because it's very, very serious. Again, I'd like to say that I would estimate, and you know, based upon some research, that the wealth of Africa approaches $1,000 trillion. Now, even right now, not deep into the 21st century, but right now, the world economy pivots upon the wealth and resources of Africans. You know, we hear about the GDP of the United States and so on and so forth. It's estimated at $20 trillion. The wealth of the Congo is $100 trillion. Now, when we talk about the U.S. economy, most of what we consider the wealth of this country is paper. There's nothing behind it. But when you talk about Africa, you're talking about real wealth. And that's why we have this thing called AFRICOM, the African Command, where the U.S. military is in over 30 countries of Africa to protect so-called American interests. And I would just add, to prevent the kind of unity or coming together for mutually beneficial purposes of Africa and China, of Africa and Asia. That alliance, which Du Bois called the unity of Pan-Africa and Pan-Asia, could lead to the demise of European and American domination of the planet. Very high stakes, my brother, as you point out.
In this book, it's called Conspiracy, the Rapid Assassination of Malcolm X by Barbara Zach Kondo. And he was saying how Malcolm had met with brothers from the area, and he had guaranteed them, he was 10,000 Afro-Americans come over to help them. It would have been Che Guevara was over there. They said Che went in disguised as an old man. So you had the Cuban faction, the Afro-Americans, rumbling against America and our allies in there. And I'm getting sick and tired of them always want to vilify the guy in North Korea as a crazy man. He got good sense. He'd be crazy if he give us nuclear weapons. If Israel not going to give up hers, don't give up yours.
Excellent. I believe we lost the call, but I just want to give Dr. Montero an opportunity to make final comments.
Well, I'm sorry Mo got cut off, man, but I heard you, and I understand precisely what you're saying, and you're always that voice of militant clarity. You do your research. But I'd like to thank Dr. Cooper for today. I mean, it's just such a pleasure, and it's such an honor to be able to come on and talk about these issues. And I would think that you're not going to hear this kind of discussion anywhere in this city, maybe in this country. And this is a great tribute to this station and to people like, again, Dr. Cooper, who keeps it real and is open to this type of discussion. So thank you very, very much.
Excellent. I want to take this opportunity to thank everybody for having me back in, wheeling me back in one more time.
They didn't hardly will.
Yeah, I've been wheeled in.
As old as he
I've
was.
been roped in, but I'm back. But I'm good. I also ask you to continue to support the work and the legacy and the life of Dr. Walter P. Lomax, without whom, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So again, stay strong and be blessed, be well, and continue to listen and support the station. Take care.
And the sunlight hurts my eyes. Do something without wanting love.